Okay, we have the craziest topic today. Divorce. Oh, nobody wants to get divorced. Okay. No one gets married to get divorced. Let's just make that really clear. But divorce happens, and not specifically more often in the fire service. It just so happens that because most of us know a lot of firefighters, we tend to think that more firefighters get divorced. It's actually not true. The divorce rate is 50% in the entire country. There's no proven record that firefighters are more likely to get divorced. It's complicated. So we're going to talk about it today. Co-parenting specifically, and co-parenting when you are going through a divorce or divorced with a firefighter and their unpredictable schedules. It's like a whole new level of chaos. I have been there. I have a stepchild, and I have been on the receiving end of many arguments in the co-parenting world. And then add in another co-parent, the step-parent, the layers just layer. They just be layering. It's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You just keep adding layers. So my guest today is Talia Bombola. She is a confidence and assertiveness specialist, certified psychodynamic, licensed psychotherapist, and award-winning clinician who has been voted Newport Beach's best therapist since 2022. Held a master's degree in clinical psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. Talia has completed 3 years of postgraduate training in psychodynamic therapy, psychoanalytical couples therapy, and infant and child adolescent psychoanalysis. Cannot say that 10 times fast. She's known for a direct and compassionate style. She brings a rare balance of confrontation and humor to her work. You guys are going to love her. She doesn't shy away from addressing difficult truths or naming the dynamics that keep couples and co-parents stuck. Clients often say that Talia tells it like it is, which also makes them feel deeply understood. This combination is especially powerful for our first responder families when communication often needs to be clear and efficient. She's also culturally competent. She has a unique passion for supporting first responder families, particularly fire families, as they balance the demands of shift work, high stress environments, and the complexities of co-parenting. Ooh, is it complex? She understands how firefighter schedules, the unpredictability of calls, and the emotional weight of the profession impact family dynamics and parenting consistency. With both clinical expertise and extensive lived experience, she brings practical tools and strategies to help couples and parents reduce conflict, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize their children's well-being above all else, because that is the end game. We want to create healthy children. We're already messed up. There's no hope. The only hope is the children at this point. She's going to give us some great tools, practical tips on how to navigate divorce and co-parenting. So let's jump into it. Talia, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's been a long time coming.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So you have your own podcast.
Yes, I used to have 3, now we're down to 1.
Oh my God. You sound like me. Okay. Like,
Yes,
don't have
yes.
enough to do already.
No, I just, I apparently love the sound of my own voice so much, why not do it on 3 different platforms?
Yes. I like the sound of my voice. However, the video thing, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like the video. Like, I have to put makeup on. I did not do that today. Okay.
I just put, like, a coat of mascara and hope for the best.
I was like, you know what? It's
Yes,
fine. It is what it
yes,
is. All
yes,
right. We're going to talk about co-parenting today.
yes,
Give
yes,
me like just the bare bones co-parenting. Just give it to me.
yes. So, as I mentioned briefly off air, I find that discussions about co-parenting when you're in the first responder family or still in that like fire community or police community, especially military as well, it's really difficult to find resources to effectively explain or support what that type of co-parenting is like because it's not traditional in the sense where either one parent's an entrepreneur or one parent works a 9 to 5 most of the time, especially with fire families. It's not that the partner who stays at home to raise the kids doesn't work, but the flexibility because of the shift schedule of first responders, more often than not, I found that a lot of the spouses that stayed home did not work a 9 to 5 and then or they did work it, but they didn't have to work actual 9 to 5 hours. They could work while the kids were asleep, or they could be flexible and do entrepreneur and being a stay-at-home parent. And that is a really big jump and shift if the marriage doesn't end up working out and you end up splitting up, but you're still co-parenting, their shift schedule still kind of rules the roost because they can't, like I said, get ordered, "Oh, you'll do week on, week off." They're like, "Well, I have this many shifts or it's fire season or I got held over, I got recalled. What are we gonna do?" So trying to navigate the complexities of co-parenting is hard enough as it is, but a lot of the times the families I worked with were like, "But it's still all about their schedule, like the first responder schedule," and I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah.
that does not end just because the marriage is no longer intact, and you still have to talk to them and negotiate and swap days, and it just looks a lot different than what, again, typical co-parenting resources are." So I wanted to come on to speak to that because I would hope not a lot of your guests can relate in that sense, but if any
Right.
of them can or they're looking for a resource, that I would hope to be that describing kind of the complexities of it.
So what do you do? I mean, I know firsthand how complicated it is because
Yeah.
I have a stepchild.
Yes.
And when she moved in with us when she was 12, and I mean, even prior to that, on the weekends,
Mhm.
even when my husband was on shift, she still came to our house
Right.
because it was our weekend.
Right.
So I was still responsible for this child because it was our scheduled weekend.
Right.
What do you say to parents who might be kind of struggling with that particular dynamic of like there's a step parent at home and dad is gone, and what is your best kind of advice to the mom and dad in this situation, how they deal with now another co-parent involved in dad's schedule, right?
Yes. I give the advice based off when did this person come into the picture as to how we can cope emotionally. So if the reason that was spurned from the co-parenting is I'm getting divorced because I cheated and I have this other person that now I'm going to marry my affair partner or move them in, that is a much different emotional set to work through than we didn't work out for whatever the reasons. Now we're split up. Now there's been some time between the split and dating again and repartnering. The emotions can't necessarily drive the co-parenting decisions. However, they can drive the decisions of how the schedule is made. So
Mm,
let's say that the person is in that person's life and they're not just a random girlfriend or boyfriend that they bring over every week. Like that, I would not be like, "Oh, let's base it off of you're gonna be home that weekend if you've dated them a month and a half." I don't no reasonable parent would trust a random person around their kid just because the significant other factor is there. We don't wanna introduce kids that soon on anyway. So there's obviously levels of severity of or seriousness of a relationship too as to how you navigate it. Ideally, you come from the base of when is that parent home the most?
mm,
And can you organize the custody schedule, the visitation schedule around when they're off shift? And if, especially if it's non-traditional, like the Kelly schedule where you work every other day and then have 4 days off, that changes every 9 days, every 6 weeks. Not every fire department does a 48 on, 48 off, or 96. So it really is, I would say,
dependent
department
on. Hmm.
dependent
Hmm.
as to what the schedule is like, but I recommend couples and clients work backwards from that schedule, and it might not look like 50-50. It rarely will look like 50-50 simply because of the ability to get recalled for overtime, the opportunity for overtime that they don't necessarily want to turn down. So I try to have couples come up with like a base schedule that works for both of them. If there's adherence to that, then there can be more flexibility on swaps or having, to your point, the comfort of even if it's not my time with my kid, or it's the dad's weekend or the mom's weekend with their kid and they're being cared for by somebody else, is that more occasional than not? If that's every single time, that would warrant a custody modification because it's
Hmm.
supposed to be the primary parent with the child, not only other people. It doesn't mean other people can't love your kid. But if I could be with them instead of someone else, I'm going to pick that. And that's where the right of first refusal, as it's often called, comes in. If that's in your parenting plan, then I would get to say, well, if you're not going to be there, then I'm going to come pick them up, even if someone else is available. Not every couple includes that. If your relationship ended very high conflict, a lot of couples choose not to include that, not because of the step parent piece. They don't really want the other person knowing what they're up to or feeling
Yep.
like policed in their personal life.
Yep.
So that's a very case by case basis where I would give that suggestion for clients or the couples I work with to include that when they're shifting into co parenting. Can you actually handle the knowledge of that? And would you be willing to take it? Because it's going to be more one sided. Because if they're on shift, you're not going to be able to call them and be like, hey, I need you for a few hours. They can't just leave for 24, 48, or 96
Yeah.
hour shift for 4 hours. So it really does. I know that's a long winded answer, but to tolerate the emotion really does depend on, is was this a breakup and then a new partner? Or was I left for this person? I'm probably not going to want them to be around my kid because I know you haven't been dating that long. And that has to be dealt with, hopefully, by two adults understanding it has to be for the best interest of the child. And it's not in the child's best interest to be around every random new dating partner because it's not good for their attachment system. So it all goes back
Yes.
to, is it for the kid's best interest or the parent's convenience? It has to be for the kid's best interest.
What do you say to those parents who just really, and this is gonna sound harsh, but I don't care, they just can't get over it, like, cannot move on? What do you say to them?
I would ask, hopefully, that they're in their own therapy, that both of them are in their own therapy, because they each need to understand what they did that led to the demise of the relationship. And this is not to blame if you are cheated
Anyone.
on,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm saying, but
Mhm.
substance use is a huge part of first responder culture. I've worked in treatment centers before. Like, there are known risk factors for certain careers where there
Yeah.
are just certain coping skills that are higher, or certain lifestyle choices that people make, to put it kindly. If the partner is struggling that they just can't get past it and they're still struggling in their own individual therapy, that's where I would typically, again, unless it's high conflict or domestic violence, I would recommend trying specifically co-parenting counseling, where the goal is, we're trying to come to an agreement neither of you are going to be fully happy with, but that works for your kids so they don't grow up in the same chaos that you probably left to prevent them growing up in, and working intently on that being the focus. And then they can take with them all the other resentment or frustration into their own therapy. And it's not to say that it ever fully goes away. Like,
Yeah.
I have to live with it on a daily basis. It's a constant reminder. The thing that I see them more often is they can't get over the frustration of, I still have to go based off of their schedule. I still have all the mental load. I'm still making all of the decisions. And a lot of the time, the first responder has the expectation, well, it'll be the way that it was when we were together, but I can just see them whenever I want. But the court system, especially, is like, no, like, we need a schedule. It can't just be when you see fit. That's called being a parent. And if
Mm.
you wanted that, then maybe decisions should have been made to keep the relationship intact, to have that be the deal, right? And
Mm.
that's the case with a lot of first responder. I'll just get have heteronormative, like, a lot of the wives or the stay-at-home wives, they're running the ship, they're doing this, they got the school, this, that. I know you've had Dr. Cutlip on before talking about the mental load. She really just details it, but that doesn't shift when you get divorced and co-parent and first responder. It just becomes almost court ordered and you just can't
Mm.
escape it. You will just swallow that pill now of reality. You will still be running all the schedules. You will still be having to go based off of their schedule. Ideally, there is some flexibility as the system goes on, but it really does depend on the age of the kids
Yeah.
as to how easy it is to get over that. And were your kids familiar with not seeing the parent all the time, it's a kind of a silver lining. It won't mess up their attachment as much as if it was traditional parents, which they both saw their kids every single day. Now it's this huge swap to go to a 2-2-3 or a 2-5. First responder couples that were split up were like, yeah, we were used to this. They weren't home all the time anyway. So that
Yeah.
can be kind of a bonus and a silver lining, is we were already somewhat used to having to do it all on many of the days of the month and be used to the call of, I'm getting recalled, I got overtime, can I take it? Or they take it and then they tell you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we were already used to that. So it makes co-parenting easier in that sense, but more frustrating that there is no reprieve from your life having to still cater to their schedule, in a sense.
And for the resentment, how do you deal with that? I mean, you're in a divorce situation, so you're already
Yeah,
pretty resentful, right? And
correct.
now you're maybe a year into the co-parenting, and
Yeah.
now you're even more resentful because it turns out, even though you're divorced, you still are doing all of these things. So what do you say to that person who's struggling with the resentment?
I usually I usually say I get it and it sucks, and I've never related anything more. The resentment will come and go. The more that you're able to understand it's coming from a rightful place. It is frustrating to have to do it all. It is frustrating to be expected to manage the schedule and be the secretary and keep up with all of the appointments, and I try to have them frame it as this might not be the best coping skill, but it usually gets them to the final one, which is, what did it feel like when you were in the relationship? Well, I was still frustrated. I was still this. I said, okay, but who did you turn to? I had my friends, my therapist, other firewives or police wives. Like there was someone else to go to. And I oftentimes ask them, did you stop doing that once you got divorced? Because shame can come in, or grief, or
Mm,
feeling like there's a comparison. I can't talk to her. Her husband's still in the picture, even though we all get what it's like to solo parent. Now I'm single parenting doing this. So they lost that sense of community. So I typically tell
mm,
them, remember that you still felt this even when you were together to some degree. And all the more reason to find a therapist, a community, a divorce support group where people get it and you can bounce ideas off of them or commiserate with them and go, I'm not alone in this.
mhm,
That's where I think that shared space, when you're still partnered and resentful of carrying the whole mental load, you can still go to your partner sometimes and say, I'm tired, I need help. And you get that empathy from them. You're not going to get that in a divorce and co parenting from your ex, but you can get it from other people. So don't lose the need or the want for that. It's very valid. It just has to be replaced into a more appropriate person, because you're not going to get that from your ex spouse typically. Yeah.
typically, yes.
Typically. Yeah. Yeah.
What are some good communication tools you recommend for the co-parenting?
I usually recommend, if couples can try it, to start with mediation or co parenting counseling to figure out. This again largely relates to the age of your children, how many children you have, and what is the shift schedule of the first responder that you're dealing with. And do they have any seniority to be able to make a permanent swap in their schedule or switch to a department that, because some court systems will look at like, well, why are you keeping such an erratic schedule? You claim that you want this, but you're willing to make no changes. Like that entitlement doesn't fly here.
Mhm.
So are you both willing to make the changes to foster it being the easiest transition on the children? Or are you both so seated in, well, I shouldn't have to change my life because I want it to stay the same way? That's not how life works. And we all know that as parents, that's not how parenting works. So that pipe dream has to be let go. I recommend couples start with mediation or some kind of co parenting counseling. For again, everything has to be filtered. What is the best for the kids? And then can it be somewhat equal for both parents? But nobody's going to get 100% of what they want. And if you can sit down and at least come to some kind of or sort of an agreement that works, again, very well for your children and decently well for both of the adults, work on it for 3 to 6 months and then see if there needs to be any modifications. And if your children are young and not in a school setting before you go through all of this, just know that it's going to need to be modified once one or both, however many kids you have, start school. You will likely be you are going to be the parent if you're the stay at home or you work from home. You are going to be the school week parent. And then if there's times that they're off line up with weekends, you may not get as many weekends. And it's just, again, it's a painful reality of in the co parenting dynamic with somebody who doesn't have a stable work schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some good rituals that build consistency between homes?
Great question. As much as possible, I would recommend the children have, you can't adhere them to like an exact, like at 7:15 we read this book. The courts aren't going to put up with that, and neither would another person. Like,
It's
please
crazy.
don't tell me how to do that. I would recommend that as much congruency and consistency in the schedule. It doesn't have to be perfect, but can they do the routine of like dinner and then bath time and then reading and downtime. I don't care what they eat, what bubbles back. It's not about the specifics. It's more of just the pattern and routine, because
Mhm,
children really do thrive on boundaries, structure, and procedural memory. Do they have a transitional object that they could take with them? A favorite stuffed animal? Buy two of everything in case they fall in love with it. You don't want to lose it. That's just good for parents in general.
mhm.
Night lights, blankets, anything like that where the child feels comforted, I would recommend having two of, in case the parent forgets or the kid forgets, because it's not their responsibility. Or what if the first responder gets called back early? They're trying to struggle to pack up their stuff, right? So it's just good to have two of everything that you know is important to your children. And for the consistency piece, I typically see doing the schedule, because they get their schedule sometimes multiple years out, but obviously it can change. It's a general suggestion. Can you at least schedule it month to month or every 3 months, knowing that there could be swaps or adjustments needed, so that the kids can start to see visually on a calendar, here's the time I get to spend at whose house with which parent. and here are the items I can bring with me to feel comforted, and not placing the responsibility on the child even more so because of the hyper independence that is often displayed in firewives especially. We sometimes subconsciously project that onto our kids, but we don't want to rob them of their childhood. So don't make it their responsibility to remember. Don't shame them if they forget, and encourage them, as any adult does as we get older. What's a checklist before you leave the house? I know I'm like coffee, keys, like that level of expectation is healthy and appropriate, but we don't want to place like, how could you have forgotten this, or never make your kids the messenger. That's how you can keep consistency as well. And I would
Oh,
suggest doing everything in like texting and email, because those in between conversations and exchanges, if they're exhausted, they're not going to remember it. And you did tell them, and they probably are like, I kind of remember it, but I don't. So never leave anything up to just a verbal conversation because we can forget or be too tired. Always have it in writing. And as much as it's not the typical recommendation, because every parent should be responsible for their own calendar, having a shared family calendar is more recommended with first responder co parenting families because of just the simple nuance of how difficult all of the shift swaps, this, that, pickups, drop offs. It's just easier all around, even if unfortunately one parent ends up managing all of it. If the goal is that the kids have the most consistency, I will happily fall on that knife. I was the more organized one anyway. It is my forte. I would trust myself doing it more.
yep. Okay. So let's talk about the kids for a second. How do we validate their emotions without bashing the other parent? Because that is huge.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sometimes you probably do it and you don't even notice that you're doing it. And I mean, I'm probably guilty of it too. And I'm married. So imagine being divorced.
Yeah.
How do you validate those kids'
Yes.
emotions and
I
feelings?
the number one and top recommended way, both from like professional experience and research, is seeing your seeing the world through your child's eyes. So there's a difference between when kids view their parents. It's typically that like the kid is here because we have the video. The kid is here and like, this is my parent. They'll only ever know them as a parent. When you are this parent with their other parent, you have a whole romantic relationship, you have a friendship ideally. So you have both of that plus a parenting role. So there's like a 3-to-1 ratio, but the goal is that your child only ever gets to know that parent as, this is my mom or this is my dad. So when I work with even intact families who are like, oh, well, your dad did this and that. No, he didn't. That's a weird thing. If you would go to your kid and said, my husband did this, you'd realize how inappropriate it is to vent to your
Mm,
kids about that. But because we're describing to them how they know them, then we think it's okay. So that's
oh,
just in general, not ever describing something your husband or your co-parent is doing. However, caveat, if there are traits that transcend, right? They run late, they're disorganized. And this is not bashing, these are like factual things that they
yes.
struggle with, or they're not consistent. They don't remember important dates. They don't celebrate birthdays, whatever it is. If the trait is about that as a person and it comes out as a friend, as a co-parent, as a significant other, we're working with children and validating, I see that this is tough for you. You're sharing that, you're mirroring back. You're sharing that you're frustrated because your dad, because they're describing, my dad said whatever, your dad or your mom is running late, that feels like they don't care about your feelings. You're basically just reframing what your kid is saying to you. You're not giving them any new data, is the other key of it. How do you
Mm,
want to handle it? Would you like me to talk to them with you? Do you want me to help you write something that you share with them? Do you want to get a therapist involved? Right? That's my bias as a therapist, but like coaching them and working with them on, I hear you. I see you. It doesn't mean I'm also not thinking, yeah, he's so annoying for doing that. I remember when we were first married. I could totally be feeling that, but it's my job to shut up and tell that to my therapist and not agree with my child. Aside from, I would be frustrated if I had to deal with that too. I know what you mean, right? Generalities are totally fine to validate,
yeah.
and then working towards the solution. How do you want to deal with this? And sometimes they will say, Mom, I want you to talk to him about it. Okay. Then that's where the documentation, our child said this. I am not bashing you when I say this. They requested that I talk to you. Could we please set aside a time to talk? Here's what I'm thinking, right? Again, solution focused about the kids, validating that their role is, it's not our job. If the parent is truly whatever fill in the blank that you think, they're going to put their foot in their mouth eventually and your
Yeah.
kid's going to find out who they are. There's no reason for us to short circuit that and make them find out sooner. And I know a lot of parents like, but they need to know because they will find out.
Yeah,
Cannot lie for the rest of your life and not get caught in some senses. They will find out eventually. And if they don't, honestly, what a blessing that not two of us had to go through the same shit with the same person,
that is
right?
so
Like if I did
valid.
a good enough job defending against that and gave that person an opportunity to show who they really are, and they might be different with that person, that's the job of a parent. That's where the sacrifice comes
Yeah,
in of it's not fair and it didn't get to be what I thought it was, but as long as my kid isn't crying on some more than they already might, some therapist's couch of my dad never loved me, I don't want to be responsible for that. I would like to facilitate the opportunity for them to have a bond, and it's up to them to navigate it. Every kid, I believe it might be woo woo, has like a soul contract with the parents they're born to, and we cannot put our fingerprints on that blueprint more than they ask us to.
I love that. That
Yeah.
is so good. I think
Yeah.
anybody, I mean, even if you're not divorced, it's excellent advice.
Yeah. Yeah, never bash the person. If you could replace it with "My husband did this," just shut up. Or "My
Yeah,
wife does this." It's just not appropriate to share with them. It's much different if if you're like you can say, "Your dad's running late." That's not bashing because it's
right.
probably factual. That's okay to say, right? Or
Yeah,
like they struggle with time management, generality, but not bashing them or using them for like emotional closeness. This is also please get a therapist and other adult friends who you can go to for support. Do not lean on your kids emotionally or make them feel like they have to go in and emotionally rescue you. Just keep that relationship separate.
that
Yeah.
part, the
Yeah.
emotionally rescue. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. How do we keep the kids connected to the firefighter when they're on duty all the time and
Yes.
you're in two households
Yes.
and the schedule is crazy?
Yeah.
What's your recommendation?
I would recommend I don't recommend putting in mainly because everything that's written in a parent whether you go to court or not, hopefully people can write it themselves without having to, but conflict can escalate, new partner it can happen. And if you have a court order, you have to follow it because either of you can be screwed over if you don't. So,
Mhm.
I don't recommend some don'ts before some do's. I don't recommend putting in forced scheduled calls because that's going to screw over both of you because what if they got called in for a shift? And if you have a high conflict or not stable ex, they're going to use that against you and try and take you to court to be like, see how many calls they missed? They're like, I was literally fighting a fire.
Right.
I wasn't like out partying or anything. Like I had a job duty. So I do not recommend forced scheduled calls. I do not recommend anything that would be burdensome time wise for the children. So let's say you start out thinking a midweek dinner visit is going to be helpful, but then they want to do soccer practice prioritize what the children want. So don't be so rigid to what we used to do it this way because kids' needs change as they get older and they become needing of more social outside interaction. We always have to be their safe landing place. To be clear, both homes have to be. However, don't schedule the calls too rigidly and don't be so forced of, well, we always do it Wednesday. You and I both know this from the holidays. There's no such thing as like a set holiday. You do it
Right.
when you can and when they're home. So again, first responder families are really prepped well for co-parenting because we're used to things being not the norm. So some do's would be have consistency of routines, greetings, and salutations of like we always do a handshake goodbye or a kiss goodbye, and that can be the same with both parents, even if it's not the same time. Can there be some consistency at minimum month to month? Can we do meals around the same time if
Mm,
possible? If there's a special occasion coming up that we know the kid wants, can we prioritize that? Again, a lot of it comes back to prioritizing for the children. And if one parent is the more stable parent in terms of schedule, it might require a swap for their consistency that they're that with them through the school week or they do every pickup. And yes, you might not get as much time with your children, but you already didn't get a lot of time with them because you chose to be a first responder. So that might grain of salt, you might get even less, but depending on what caused the divorce, we have to accept that as part of it. We're at where we're at now. We can't go back and redo the past. How can we make it consistent for the kids and listen to their voice as they get older? If they say, I have an easier time this weekend being at my dad's, even though you love being with them, okay. Or if they tell the dad or the parent, I really want to stay with mom the next 2 weeks because I saw your shift in this and that, and I have prom and this. Okay. So there has to be, again, not such stringent adherence to the schedule if you find a good groove as your kids get older because they're going to start resenting you for being the parent who well, it's my weekend. It's not you don't own them, right? Like
Yep.
they're not property. It's their time with their other parent. And that's how it should be worded. And when you look at it through that lens, the flexibility, as long as it primarily benefits the child, has to be prioritized.
You're giving me terrible flashbacks right now. I'm like, "Ah." I remember well, I said it's my weekend a time or 2. I mean, we've definitely said that, but we
And
also
that is true, but the way, right? Just the simple correction of like, this is
totally.
the weekend that we have for you to be with your dad. All
Yep,
about that. Yeah.
yep, yep. Okay, how do we avoid the power struggles?
Tell me more about your question before I go on.
Like, over discipline,
Ah,
routines,
yes.
who's the fun parent, like Disneyland dad syndrome.
Oh, yes. That occurs even if you're in a relationship because they get home and then they take their hibernation nap and they're like, I'm ready to be fun. And we're like, you know how much laundry, again, the resentment and the mental load. What I tell women, again, typical, that's
Yeah,
how the
it's
split
okay,
is.
heteronorms can.
What I tell women is you don't have to feel, you might feel the need to overcompensate and be the structured, planned if landing place. You can also be the fun parent. Also be the one who's like, yeah, you want a second scoop of ice cream, go for it. If you have a non-conflictual or less than high conflict relationship with the co-parent, sending a quick message, right? Let's say dietary stuff is usually it, or screen time I hear a lot about. Send a quick message and just say, hey, just so you know, they kind of hit their sugar limit this weekend. Food for thought if you want to change anything. You're not saying so you have to give them less. You're just informing them so they can make a more informed
Mm,
decision. So small things like that of just keeping them in the loop, like, hey, same as we would with a nanny. Hey, they already had their one, let's say they're weaning off of like pouches and going to solids. Like, hey, they had their one pouch of the day, so don't give them any more. Approach it like that. So whatever you want them to know to avoid those kinds of small daily choice power struggles. And you also don't need to be texting 24/7 like when you were together. They don't need to know that. Like
yeah,
if you were that chill, you probably would have stayed together because nobody's best friends, especially right when you split up. Like maybe years down the line, you can be closer, but you don't need to keep them on a day-to-day update. Like they just pooped, they just took a this. Unless they're an infant, 0 to 3, we don't need those kind of day-to-day
totally.
updates. So those don't have to be a power struggle. But if you have agreements on screen time or dietary restrictions, keeping them in the loop just as you would any parent. And moms, you can be the fun parent. You can be the one who maybe lets them stay up a little bit late if you know that you have them the next day and you can sleep in, or you know that the next day you'll be able to adjust a meeting or what have you. So it's about taking that responsibility and saying, I can be responsible, but I also don't have to be burnt out, stressed out, whatever feeling all the time, which is more typical of intact, right? When we're still married and we're expected to do everything. And maybe they say that they're trying their best, but I've met men who are familiar with weaponized incompetence and they have more traditional, they're like, well, you're home all the time. You just do it. I don't have anybody saying that to me. And also, if you have a good custody schedule, I recommend saving your chores for when your kids are gone. That does not mean that you let your house go to hell in a handbasket, get overwhelmed to the point where you're like, but I have to be the fun where she said to do. No, balance it out. And also then don't take it to the extreme of only ever doing housework when your kids are gone, because that doesn't set them up for realistic expectations of managing parenting and family life with the household. But if it's like a big project, wait till they're gone. You'll have something to do to look forward to. You can share with them once they get back what you were up to that weekend. You were just sitting alone crying all weekend on the couch. The first few months it's normal, but like go do things for yourself. And those big projects that women, because this is probably going to be good for your listeners regardless. Women's biological hormones typically function off of a monthly cycle, whereas the world is built off a 24-hour cycle because it's based off of what works for guys. Feel this innate pressure, never ending to do list because we were meant to live our lives by the month, not by the day. So our
Mm,
brain goes, but I have to go to Trader Joe's and Costco and there, and we go through the whole thing. And you'll talk to a guy, they're like, just do it tomorrow. And we're like, just do it. Oh, I guess I could.
yeah,
But if we're resentful towards our partner, I'll be like, "Screw you, I'm gonna do it today just to spite you," right? Like,
totally.
I have to do it today. That might be true, but go through your to-do list and be like, "Do I actually have to force this in with my kids with their other parent? Or could I do it with them as a fun chore?" So to try to balance the power struggle, get out of the day-to-day things that you don't actually need to be a part of unless you're invited in. Text about the updates you've already agreed on. Health and safety, obviously, are a few of those that could be day to day. and then don't feel the pressure to not also be the fun parent. Everything in moderation for both. If you have the kind of ex who is totally a Disneyland parent, eventually the kids will not like it and they will tell you, my stomach hurts, I'm sick of eating this, I'm sick of whatever, and then it will course correct. So
Mhm.
sometimes you have to let it not suffer, but like they got to struggle a little bit for the dad to really see, like, oh, this is not helping my kids and they don't want to come over just because I thought I was so fun. But go let them have that fun experience.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
What do you think the number one stressor is right now for divorced couples who co-parent
In the first
when there's
responder. Yeah.
yeah,
The number one stressor,
the schedule?
the schedule for sure. Yeah, I would say definitely the schedule and all that it brings with it, because with other couples that I work with or that I am in like support groups with, it is so much different when they have a 2-2-3 or a 5-2, whatever, alternating weekends, whatever it might be. It's
Mhm.
so foreign. Like, we were already used to the shift schedule as part of our life. And then it's foreign to have it's like, "Oh, you go without seeing your kid for whatever else." It's like, "Yeah, but the first responder was kind of used to that too." So sometimes the schedule is stressful because you have to be away for longer than you ever have been, and there's
Mhm.
limits, there's, like, age appropriate limits also developmentally. We're not gonna be jumping a six-month-old into week on, week off, that would traumatize them, like, no. But the schedule is the number one stressor for divorced couples co-parenting within a first responder system, because your life, even though you're divorced and you don't wanna ever see this person again, maybe, and you have to for the kids, is still going to be off of their first responder schedule, and that's where it's so frustrating and building, because it's like, I can never be free of you.
Yeah.
That is probably the number one problem or stressor, because there is no breakup the way that other couples get to have a breakup or get to have swaps where they're like, oh, well, we both work this. And then there's the scorekeeping of like, do we get a daycare? Do we get a nanny? Because I can be home right there. When they're off, they're off. They don't have to clock in and clock out the way that if we're working, I might not get the full 8 or 9 hours of the visit. So the power struggle then becomes who gets more time, even within the time you agree to, because every day they have their kids, they're fully off. But that doesn't mean that every day that we have ours, that we're fully off either. So I think balancing that, if it can be less conflictual, trying to make it about the kids and maximizing the time that the kid has with both parents, but also honor the need for the non first responders parent, like that schedule, to have more structure, because I work more of like a Monday through Thursday, let's say, or a Monday through Friday. Even if I can modify some of my hours, I'm going to need childcare that's flexible with the Kelly schedule. I have a great nanny, thankfully, but other couples are like, well, then let's put them in daycare. And then the first responders like, but they don't need to be in it on Wednesday and Friday and Tuesday of Monday of this week. No, daycare works like that. They're like,
Yeah.
you pay us for the month. You can pull them out, but the rent is due when the rent is due. So then finances become a part of it also, I'd say, as the struggle. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. There needs to be that flexibility though, and I think coming at it from understanding, like, how can we make this work best? Maybe it's delaying starting school. Maybe it's picking a day program where you can pick at the beginning of the week which days that you need care. Maybe it's finding a nanny that you have to pay a little extra just to make sure they stay with just you, or you and another first responder family on an opposite shift schedule. So you have that coverage if you need it, and having that village of support so that the finances, which are already going to be conflictual, with support and spousal and how long we would get, this too, like it compounds the problem, because you're never going to make as much. And then they get resentful that like, I have to pay this child support and overtime. Okay. That happens though. And like, if you chose to be the one who did behaviors to end the relationship, that's a consequence of your own actions. I don't really care how much it is. It's based off timeshare and income. I didn't write the law, but you have to follow it. So it's like, there's no sense in being resentful. Child support's due to your child, not to your ex. That's another thing I would say as a conflict. This is not you paying your ex-spouse. This is you fulfilling your legal obligation to your child. So if you get resentful that you're funding your ex's lifestyle, as moms, probably the last thing we do is spend money on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Definitely.
not it's not like the first thing I would go out and do. It's still even a struggle to be like, "Oh, I could do that." And I have my own source of income, and it does force, I think, a bit more creativity on the mom side of things. What can I do as a side hustle or a part-time gig where I still get to spend probably as much as I wanted to spend time with my kids, but how do I not lose myself in that process? Or only still identify as like an ex-fire wife? Because that should not be, I know I've seen your post too, like that should not be anyone's identity. It should not be the fireman's identity because the ego concern, and it should not be the fire wife's identity. Like, who are you separate from your profession or the profession of your spouse is a really important thing to know.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. And oh my God, please don't be the ex firewife. That's so wild. Like you're just the ex. Okay.
Never be the ex, I think, is my best advice. Though they might try to paint you as that because it's a convenient narrative for them. But if all of your exes are crazy, at the end of the day, like the common denominator is you. If you have 2 or 3 ex-wives and you're the fireman, it's not them. You
Yeah,
have a picking problem at that point. Like, yeah.
that's gonna be the the hook right there.
Yeah, you have to look at, like, who's choosing all of the people who are all crazy, like, did you pick them when they were crazy, or did you make them crazy is the second question.
Mm,
Yeah, is that your type is, like, mentally unstable? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
you might have
Everybody's
mommy
entitled to
issues.
have a type. Yeah, they oh, a lot. They wouldn't go into a job that facilitated a savior complex if they didn't have some kind of yes. That could be a whole other episode.
That
Yeah.
no, definitely. We might have to
Yes.
bring you back
Yes.
for that one.
The psychology, and there's so much research on the psychology of like which type of what who specifically is the best fit for this career. And I listened to your episode a while ago on the debunking with the infidelity. It can happen in any profession, obviously, but the ones who choose to do it within this profession already had a specific psychological archetype that tended more towards sociopathic impulsive tendencies, because who chooses to run into a burning building when
Mhm.
everybody else is running away from it? That's a very specific psyche. So take with that what you will, and you're partnering with them. Yeah, they might still make impulsive decisions or think of themselves like that doesn't stop just because you get divorced and are co-parenting. All the
That.
do not get divorced or co-parent thinking it's going to get better and you'll escape what you don't like, because you are still married to their schedule. Even if you're divorced from them, you're married to their schedule
If you had a
until you're
kid with them, you are
yes,
permanently tied to their schedule.
for life. Yes.
Yes, until that kid is
At least till
18.
our kid is 18 or can
Yep.
drive, and then there's more flexibility, but yeah. It's
Yes.
the
Oh,
long haul. Yes, it's a very long decision. Yeah. So if you're considering it and you're like, "Oh, but the schedule's the problem," it's not gonna change. You may as well stay together, find a great couples counselor. And I'm not saying forced to make it work for the kids, but if truly the gripe is the schedule, I can promise you, you can too. That's not gonna change if you split up.
totally.
It's gonna probably get worse. So
Yes.
take that with a grain of salt.
You're gonna be super
Yeah.
resentful.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay, any last thoughts?
Ooh, any last thoughts? I'm sure I have a ton of them. If you are listening, if you've gotten this far in the episode, thank you. If you're listening to this and you're in the thick of it with the frustration, the resentment, the schedule's not working, etc., please like reach out and ask for help. Sometimes it just takes a second or third set of eyes to try to filter away from the emotion. Somebody who's been in it but isn't in your situation can often help. And if you're considering this or you're feeling like you're on the brink, it still is a good idea to try out couples therapy and voice this to your first responder that you're with. It may just need to be aired in a different way.
Mhm.
And they have their own thoughts and feelings, I'm sure, about it as well. So don't go right into this is never going to work. We'll just pull the ripcord. And that also doesn't mean stay way too long where it's like, how long do you do CPR in a dead body? Really? Like, you don't want to wait for it to be a corpse. And you're like, I don't know why this isn't working. Try to get into counseling sooner to prevent the need for this episode even coming true in your life would be the best advice. If you already find yourself there or you're like, no, I'm resolute on that, try to find a therapist or a support group. You can always DM me. I'm happy to help. Like, what can be the most supportive for you ideally is also the most supportive for your child, but it doesn't feel as shitty as it does in the beginning forever. It's just really tough getting adjusted in the beginning with two households and everything that comes with it, like we talked about with the power struggle.
Yeah, if you thought it was crazy trying to adjust one household, imagine two. It's a freaking nightmare. I could write a
Yes.
damn book about it. Oh my
Oh yeah.
God.
I will say the coming home to just your house where you're not also if imbalanced mental load was causing a lot of the resentment also, coming home to just your house where it's just your responsibility and you're not also cleaning up after them, only one doing the you will be the only one doing the grocery shopping. When you're married and you have a partner, it's natural for your brain to go, this is my respite. This is my person who's my relief person, right? Just like they get relieved on shift. That's their relief. Like they're our relief when we come back.
To
If we can't find a groove where we can do a great job at our first responder coming home and being our relief, that can usually devolve quickly into conflict because they have the expectation of coming home to rest. And we're like, thank God I get a break. So if you're not communicating well on when the break starts for each of you, or that person can't compartmentalize and jump right in and then get the rest, try that first. But I can confidently say this long doing it, it is so comforting. I don't have to come home and clean up after anybody except me and my kid. So if I'm stressed because there's dishes in the sink, I take a breath and I'm like, those are my
they're my
dishes.
dish.
But if
Mhm.
I came home and there were somebody else's, it feels, which sometimes it is, inconsiderate. It can feel lazy. It can
Yeah.
be disrespectful. Well, you were home all day. What did you do? What? You have the day
Mhm.
off, sir. I had to sleep. I don't care. You chose your job, right? Like that cycle doesn't come up when you're co-parenting because they are responsible. And that was one of the best things of the parenting plan that I have. If your stuff changes last minute, that's on you to fix it. I am done being the one who rescues everything and is my career getting messed up, whatever else. It took a long time to get there, but we're not in a relationship anymore. It's not my job to pick up your slack in that sense. I will for my kid, but it's not my job to. So if you get recalled on a day you have her, figure it out, just like I would have to. That's your job now. So you can offload a lot of those moments that you previously took on or agreed to take on as part of a partnership. You'll have a lot more freedom once you find your groove. It's shit at first, but look forward to it. There is light at the other side of the tunnel.
Okay, where can people find you? You have a website?
Yes, yes. My website for therapy, if you're anywhere in the state of California, if you're local to Orange County, I can see you in person, unless you want to fly in for a session, but that would be very exorbitant. But I can see you anywhere virtually in the state of California. That is therapy with Talia, spelled TALIA.com. And then I'm most active on Instagram, so you can DM me at Talia Bombola. I can always email you the links to put in the show
I got
notes.
the
And then I
links.
also can help even if you don't have to be a couple to come for co-parenting counseling, and that's where Zoom is great. Like, I'm happy to help you. I have like a separate part of the therapy thing for coaching and consultation for families going through, how do we write a parenting plan with this? Because you talk to any lawyer and they're like, their schedule is what? They like pitch you this and they're like, I don't know what to do with it. So I have a lot of expertise with navigating the schedule. So if you do end up still needing lawyers or a mediator, you at least have some semblance of, here's how this works. Here's the legal language with it too.
Mm,
Here's a
that's
starting
awesome.
place for you from a first responder family system who's been there navigating it. So I'm happy to help.
That's awesome. This is actually really good advice. Even if you're not divorced, you should probably
Yes.
still listen to it. And as always, we encourage you to try therapy before you hand over the divorce papers. Okay,
Yes.
just
Call
give it
a
a whirl.
therapist before you call a lawyer.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Unless there's abuse, then that's
That's
a totally
different. That
different
could be another
situation. Yes,
episode. Yes.
yes,
But ideally, yes. Try to triage it to see if it's salvageable. And if so, how? Do you even want to do that? And if not, gracefully exit as soon as you can before it becomes past the point of no return. You don't want to start co-parenting from scorched earth if you can help it.
yes.
Yeah.
Amen. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank you.